Organizers for the No Kings protest estimating 7 million people turning out for more than the 2,700 protests across the country this past weekend. Joining me now is Eddie Johnson, former superintendent of the Chicago Police Department, to discuss the stress that such protests put on law enforcement. Superintendent, great to have you with us. So the No Kings protest drew thousands in Chicago over the weekend. It was really actually an impressive number of people that came to the streets in Chicago. What does crowd control and safety look like? How do police prepare for such an event that sometimes one might say historically has a way to go sideways if not handled properly?
Yeah, well, it does. And thanks for having me tonight. So typically what happens is we'll look at the intelligence that we get, through social media threads, as well as intel. A lot of the protesters have leaders that will discuss these protests with law enforcement, and then we'll figure out what we think we need in terms of hand power. Now, one thing that Chicago has to its benefit, we have a lot of different units. So our bike unit is typically what we would use to control a crowd such as this. But we also have patrolmen that will pull from different assignments to come in and help those particular districts, the downtown districts, with the crowd control. And typically we'll try to talk to the organizers so we can ensure that it's peaceful.
Now, we've had reporters on the ground. I've been there myself to see it firsthand. And, a couple weeks ago in front of the Broadview facility, you had some bad actors that were there. Gradually, it dissipated. There were still some arrests that were made after the protests. But the protests for a number that were there were mostly peaceful downtown Chicago. It wasn't until later in the night. What are you hearing firsthand right now in terms of the agitators? Is it having an effect when you arrest these people? Does it send a message? Is that why we see some of these clashes dwindling in Chicago, particularly Broadview?
Yeah, well, typically what happens is you have outside agitators, essentially people that aren't really from Chicago or the surrounding suburbs, that come in and instigate the violence in these protests. Most of the local protesters, they already know the routine. They're not new at protests, and we're not new to them. So typically when we have those types of situations, it's usually outside agitators. And when you start throwing things or getting physical with the police, you are going to get arrested. They're not punching bags, so you don't get to just treat them any type of way that you want. Now, if you want to hurl insults, okay, fine. But once you start throwing things or physically attacking the police officers, the police will arrest you because, like you said, they're sending a message that if you pursue and engaging in that type of behavior, then you'll be held accountable for it.
We can see on the screen here the video playing of those state police, Cook County Sheriff, sort of holding the line in front of the Broadview facility. This because the National Guard is not allowed there. Last Friday, the Trump administration asked the Supreme Court to allow the National Guard. We saw a ruling today for Portland. I often wonder, Superintendent, when you see the riot police coming out, whether it's in Los Angeles or here we see it in Broadview, state police, how much strain does it put on any department when they're the ones that need to kind of come out en masse and hold back a lot of these protesters? How much strain does it put on the department?
Yeah, it adds additional strain or stress to the department at large. Typically what we do in CPD, we'll have a softer look on the front lines until we need to bring in, the specialized units with the riot gear on for crowd control. Because what we found is if you put the riot gear cops out there initially, that signals to the protesters that you're ready for a fight. So if you want to de-escalate it, then you put the soft clothes officers out there first. But of course, it puts a strain because you have to pull these people in from different other assignments. And let's not forget this. These officers are human. They're people too with feelings and everything. So, those situations are stressful. But we typically, if we see officers starting to get a little bit unraveled, we'll typically pull them off the front line and put somebody else there to take their places.
Former Chicago PD Superintendent Eddie Johnson, really appreciate your insights. Thank you so much.